Hi guys, how are you doing today? It's about the lunatics. No, I'm kidding. It's about full moon. And I have people around me which like to think they live in a very scientific world, so to speak. And at the vineyard we have some garden parties now and then, and usually some of the other people there choose a date which is, well, perfect for their schedule, and I pick the days according to the full moon. So why would I pick a date according to the full moon, you might think? It's because I've noticed that at the day of full moon usually the weather is better. It's a pattern. It might be right, it might be wrong, I don't know. But when I'm on a hike, I like the moonlight to be there, and I also prefer to walk not in rain all day. If I have a day like this, it's overcast, it's nice weather, it's more pleasant. So would the full moon affect the weather? Well, I don't know. It will affect the atmosphere, but is it enough to change everything? Or how much of a change is changing everything? If the butterfly in China could change the weather, I don't know. Some people like to garden according to the lunar calendars. I'm not trying to prove anything. I don't have to, I don't want to. I will give you a link down under to read, to study, and they explain it much better than I do. But I tried for a while. Some calendars might be different from others. I'm not here to discuss that. I'm just saying that I tried to follow one calendar for a period, and then I saw a change in my garden. It was like things was getting more into balance. And since I also come from a scientific world, I skipped the calendars, and then I just did what I wanted when I wanted. But I made notes what I did when, and then I started to look back into the calendars, and I saw that what I was doing when I was doing it was what they recommended. And since I seen the same pattern, well, I'm not saying you should buy a lot of books, computer programs in order to make your schedule in the garden. Not at all. I'm just saying that maybe the seeds and the plants know better than we do. Yes, I know it's science, kind of spooky and lunatic, but maybe the plants and the seeds know exactly when to germinate, when to sprout. So when I'm taking a seed, we just breed it in Spain and put it here and start new plants under totally different conditions. Try to imagine you moving to a new home, new job, new education. You change everything in your life. Would you be kind of stretched? Would you like to have a short period of time in order to balance your new schedules, your new rhythm? I just see the full moon like it's a wave. It's like a rhythm, and I live next to the sea, so I see this rhythm The tide is not that big here. It's about 10 centimeter plus or minus the normal. We have much more tides because of the wind. It's not because of the moon. But in other places the tide are like 10 to 15 meters. That's a lot. So if the moon affects the water, making tides with huge differences, would the moon affect the water in the ground? Just a bit. So could you imagine that it would also affect the atmosphere in the soil? So when the water would push up the air in the soil, and then it take a deep breath for some hours, it will suck in air, and then after some hours it will push it up. So it's like also the water in the soil is breathing like 4 times every day. So if you have a very compacted soil, it could be deep clay, hard pan, compacted from machineries. It could be a sidewalk. It could be a lot of reasons. If you start to have some plants moving their roots into the soil, making small holes, it could start to bring up nutrients, and all these kind of things will affect the microbiology, the chemistry in the soil. If there's water, not so much water, if there is the balance of nutrients, we should think much more about feeding the soil than feeding the plants. I will bring that up in another video about balancing the nutrients for your soil. I have just seen some numbers from a farmer. You know, in conventional or modern farming, we tend to have rows of crops. Even in the forestry here, we have rows. That is why our trees are breed in nurseries, because they have to learn to be in perfect straight lines. So when they are planted in the forest, they know how to do it. No, it's just a joke we make. But literally, if you see a forest here, all the rows are straight. They have to, because that's the part of the system. Even our forest here is production. It's not just the farming. So if we dig deeper into the ground, it's not really rocket science. It's a lot of small pieces in a big puzzle, and as you try to study some of them, you get the bigger picture, so to speak, and a deeper understanding. But of course you have to start somewhere. If we see a product, it's on the label, this is perfect for, well, blueberries. I don't want to mention any other products here. And blueberries need to have this acidic soil. Really? Or would it more like to have companion plants, which is making the soil more acidic? Or is it that where they used to be, the soil is acidic and it's concerned to other conditions in that area? And how do we know? The funny thing is that when we're talking about the chemistry in the soil, I never hear people mention that actually the roots from the plants are extruding hydrogen, and hydrogen ions are actually acid. And why would a plant extrude acids? Because it could dissolve sand, clay, stone. So do plants eat stone? Yes, in fact. Or they feed the bacteria and fungi around them, and then they will start to eat the sand and stone. If you think this is very interesting, you should see my videos about microremediation and growing fungi, and the videos about trichoderma. I have been thinking that people with high standards might easily get frustrated. So I changed my mindset about weeding. Now I have this 1% of my weed is on 90% of my area. So what does that mean? Yes, it means that 90%, not at all, just 90%, I keep almost weed free. And this gives me the opportunity to have some areas I don't have big fuss with weeding, and well, he's way far out. You think it was about the lunatics, the full moon. Well, sure, but if we see the earth, what kind of power do we actually basically using on the earth but solar power? We have the sun. It gives energy to the plants. It gives us gas and coal and gasoline, all kind of fuels. It gives us the heat it changes the atmosphere. So actually, basically, we have most of our energy resources from the sun. But sometimes when we have the full moon, we also have the reflections from the moon. When I was a kid, rednecks on the countryside, they're just growing things and it just happens. But when people are moving into town and having street lights, if you're planting your beets too close to a street light, the light from the lamps will affect the beet, so it's growing into seed sooner than you want it. That's common knowledge when I was a kid. Now we have breeded them differently, and now we don't have 5 seeds in one seed, we have just one single, so we just space them evenly and we don't have to weed them. But years ago it was common knowledge, don't sow your beets next to the street light, because they will grow into flower and seeds before you want them. We tend to think beetroots and carrots, it's just one short part of the season they're growing, but actually they're biannual. So the first year they grow the root, and that's what we harvest. But in nature they're growing the root, and then next year they're growing the flower to produce the seeds. And parsley and that kind of thing, it's the same. So if you keep your carrots or your beetroots to the next season, you will see this happen, and then you could harvest your seeds.